All right. Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar for Unpacking Sustainability Myths and talking about navigating workforce and organizational performance and sort of the intersection of sustainability in those things. So welcome for joining us. I'm Jessie Servio-Ortiz. I'm the Managing Director of the Wisconsin Sustainable Business Council. Most of you probably know me, but if you don't, nice to meet you. Thanks for being here. You know, it's really our mission to help advance sustainable principles and practices forward through business. And we do this through helping educate business professionals, help them measure and improve their sustainability outcomes through our Green Masters program tool. And we facilitate connection primarily through networking events, as well as our conference, as well as sort of online connections. We are owned and operated by WMEP. And so that's sort of the consulting arm, and WSBC is sort of the program arm around sustainability. So as a member of our organization, you get multiple benefits, access to the Green Masters program. We play an annual game of cool choices. We celebrate the achievements of our businesses through our Sustainable Business Awards. So those are some of those programs. And then directly through membership, we help with education. As I mentioned, through these types of webinars, you have access to a platform where you have tools and resources. I mentioned the Green Masters program, and then facilitating connection in addition to helping showcase your sustainability story. So for example, we love to invite our members to speak in our monthly webinars to share your sustainability story to help our network learn from you and what you've been implementing and achieving and learning throughout your journeys. I want to make sure you all know that it's almost conference season. The conference is just around the corner here. It's about 6 weeks, 5.5 weeks out. So we are going to be in Madison this year, and TrueStage has been generous to host us. We're very excited to be in this space. It's a new building. It has some great sustainability features. So we're going to be gathering there on Thursday, November 16th. Registration is currently open. I will drop that in the chat in just a moment. And the night before, we'll be having our awards reception at Windorf. So you can come to both events or just the conference if you're interested. And today's webinar is really kind of a primer for one of our whole tracks that we're having in the conference this year, which is all around workforce challenges. So we invite you to the conference to come dive in a little bit deeper on some of these topics and or other topics of interest that you have in sustainability. So here's my contact information. At any point in time, I am a great resource. If you have any questions regarding sustainability, regarding resources, regarding tools, regarding your membership, the conference, any of that, feel free to reach out to me. If you're not currently a member, we do invite you to consider joining us in membership or come check out the conference and see what it's all about. So today's webinar is, like I said, all about sort of this intersection of workforce and sustainability, and we have some great speakers lined up for you. So they're going to sort of dive in and introduce themselves, but I wanted to just thank them for being here, thank them for all their contributions to WSBC. Both Aaron and Lisa are on the conference planning committee, so they've also been organizing this workforce track for you for the conference. So they're just a great resource and wealth of knowledge on this topic. And then Carol works for WMEP, our parent company, leading the talent and culture services. So I'm excited for what they have to share with you today. And with that, I am going to turn it over to Aaron.
Awesome. Thank you, Jessie. And hi, everybody. So as Jessie mentioned, this is a taste and a teaser of the information we're going to be going deeper on at the conference. So we really hope to see you all there. My name is Erin Bauer. I am the Product Development Manager at ASQ Excellence. We are the sister association to American Society for Quality, or ASQ, as it's known, and we are in Milwaukee. And for the last 3 years, as a trade association, we've been very deeply involved in organizational research on performance best practices. So my team and I are responsible for the Insights on Excellence benchmarking research, which you see an image on your screen. I will drop a link in the chat that you guys can all check it out. And there is data that I'm going to be showing today that specifically focuses on the changes in the workforce that we've been seeing, and also how sustainability and environmental social governance actually play a huge role in our quality circles that we have membership in. So the membership that we deal with are quality-based professionals and orgs, and it's using a lot of foundational quality principles, but in a new way within the modern era to tackle a lot of these challenges that we have. So again, I'll drop a link in the chat so you guys can download the research that we actively are working on. But to get started, I wanted to kind of backpedal a little bit and just talk about skills in general, because we've seen just a significant impact across the board starting years ago. So when we think about the skill shifts that especially have occurred in the last 3 years due to the pandemic, everyone was suddenly having to forced to be digital, right? But this has actually been happening for some time. So when McKinsey brought this data forward, we saw that starting in 2016, when they started measuring, this was really how the skill sets broke down. And this is pretty much across industries, and both in the US and Western Europe, because these are the most interconnected economies, if you think about that from what we consider most like Western best practices in our facilities and in our organizations, and that type of industry focus. And you can see that there's going to be a significant shift from the reduction of physical and manual down almost 27%, which is crazy. If you think about that, that's a very significant shift. But then if you look across the board, higher cognitive skills and technological skills are even, they're also right up there, with the technology piece being even bigger. Now, when this was published, this was actually pre-COVID. This is actually something that we know has shifted significantly since. And especially within the last 12 months with the rise of ChatGPT and other types of AI platforms, I'm really curious to see when McKinsey revisits this data, how much more significantly this is going to shift. They had made predictions at the time showing what this work is going to look like in 2030. But as we think about the challenges it faces today from an environmental, social, and governance standpoint, we're seeing very similar trend lines come through, in that it's less about the human's physical capabilities, but definitely more about the higher cognitive. So this is critical thinking, problem solving, and then also how technology can enhance our performance even more and help us get faster results. So the reason why I bring this up is that in the next slide, this is also a great indicator of where skills are shifting when we think about sustainability in general. This is a snippet of the Green Biz State of Green Business 2023 report. And this is actually only a fraction of the graphic. The graphic is quite big. But what I wanted to show you all is that, and especially in the last couple of years here, and the pandemic was in here, right? So 2020 and 2021, they had assessed the fact that a lot of the sustainability managers that were in their jobs were performing for the organizations that had those roles. There's a mix here of very traditional skill sets and then newer skill sets. So when we think about this, the way that these skill sets have been ranked, obviously they fluctuated a little bit, but you see very common threads coming through as well. There's the data analysis piece. There's also the program management and the project management piece. But if you look in there too, the analytical skills, the problem solving, those types of threads of normal, when we think traditional types of skill sets, are still very prevalent. And what I really want to make sure that is understood on this slide is that when we're thinking about who we need to hire from a sustainability standpoint, if we have leadership that comes to the table, or board that comes to the table and says, look, we need to shift into becoming a more sustainable company, chances are you might actually already have a lot of people in the organization that can rise to this challenge. We think about sustainability being more new, but in many ways, this actually is it's a blend of traditional competencies with newer terminology and with more advanced practices that have come out in more recent years. So my challenge to you all is to think about, who do you work with in your teams that can actually become early adopters of this if you're new on this journey? But also if you're in a situation at a company where you're pretty much advanced, you're already doing the work, but you need more help and you're looking for people, look at cross-functionally. Who in the organization might have these types of skill sets that are identified as needing to be a sustainable leader's competency set, right? So we can train to sustainable practices. We can train to understand what materiality assessments are. But when we think about those high value functions that are shown on the screen, such as product and process design, engineering, especially the skilled trades and especially the labor trades, which I know Lisa's going to talk a little bit more about too, there's a lot of things in here too that we actually have ready to go in our current workforces that we can just mobilize. But this is where we have some discrepancies showing in the data we've done. So going to the next slide, in our IOE data, we're showing that actually there's some confusion on how to organize these internal teams to work together to advance ESG initiatives. So this data is from our 2023 IOE category report. This is what my team and I published. And we found that there's really not one right answer based on the company. And there's probably a variety of factors that contribute to that, right? So it's how big is your company? How big are the challenges you're trying to address? But then also maybe what is the demand? So if you're just getting off the ground, if it's something that's a little bit new to you, you might be in the early processes of maybe having a person or a single department starting to work on that. And that's, you can see that up towards the top of this graph. But towards the bottom of this graph, we see 48% of, and these are usually the larger companies, they have a very robust cross-functional team that is developed or has been developed to really address these initiatives. Because as we see within ESG, this is truly a cross-functional type of work to accomplish. This involves financing teams, this involves operations teams, human resources, especially operations like on the, boots on the ground as far as in the factory floors or in different types of, the facilities that are being run. So I really challenge you all to think about this too, is that when you read this type of research, it might fit well for one size of company, but this also kind of gives a good direction for if you're just getting off the ground, it gives you an idea of maybe what's working best out there for a lot of teams. And we're seeing more and more the direction go in a cross-functional format. And that also helps then too mobilize people you might already have in-house that have those valuable skill sets that can come forward and help address these ESG challenges. So my next slide, and this is actually going to be my final slide for my portion, I want to spend a little bit of time just talking through these line items because it's really important to also understand that if you are a leader in your company, you absolutely do need to champion this effort. Otherwise, this won't get off the ground. Many times we think of ESG or sustainability being a grassroots effort, which is absolutely true. And that's great when you have concerned employees of a company that want to do something or they want to funnel their passions into a project. But what leaders might be leaving out of this equation is that there's opportunity to be had here. There's importance of external relationships, which is also our supply chains or our value chains. There's also workforce development. If you want to retain and keep your employees and give them career pathing opportunities, this is an absolutely good way to pursue that. We know that people want to be involved in more purpose and mission-driven initiatives at their work. They want to feel that they have made a great contribution and not just collect a paycheck. So if we think about how leaders can play a pivotal role in this, this could be a great way to help develop your teams too for pretty little cost, because when you think about the amount of information that's out there right now with sustainable training or sustainability training, there's actually a ton of options to pursue. But then the last piece of this that's really important is that there's investments in quality improvement alone when you think about customer relations, product viability, reliability too, or defect mitigation that ESG absolutely addresses. So this slide in particular, and this is one that I called out from our Insights on Excellence category report, right now, our respondents are saying they disagree that their companies are essentially doing this all well. So it doesn't mean that they're not wanting to do it. It might mean that they are either confused on how to do it, or the sad part is maybe they don't have leadership that is effectively mobilizing them or putting them in a position where they can grow into these roles. And that's why when we think about this from a workforce standpoint, this is really such a huge opportunity because we know these are problems we have to solve. And a lot of times leadership will look outside saying, who can we hire? Who can we bring on board? Rather than looking internally first and saying, we might actually have a lot of talent in the building that can actually help us get this moving off the ground. So when you look at these 3 points in particular that we did our research on, the organization effectively holding external partners or vendors accountable to ESG regulations and standards, that's huge. That's supply chain. And that can be done because many suppliers are looking to help with this, right? So it's building those partnerships and getting those suppliers on board. Also, the second point of my organization's leadership has effectively guided the entire workforce to comply with ESG regulations and standards. This might just be a simple knowledge gap. This might be where leaders can start bringing on-site workshops or start engaging with external SMEs, such as subject matter experts that know this, to come in and train the workforce. Doesn't mean that they necessarily have to hire somebody brand new, but it might just be that your upskilling looks different. And then the last piece here too is my organization has made significant investments in quality improvement processes to ensure it meets ESG regulation standards requirements. 63% disagreed. And that's where, especially in my organization that I'm a part of, this is where we're trying to move the needle and empower our members to know as a quality professional, they have the basic skills of auditing, risk management, several different types of project management or several different types of quality management tools that absolutely can be transitioned into this and help get these ESG initiatives off the ground. And I know Carol and Lisa are going to talk a little bit more about some of these things, but we are going to go a little bit deeper on this at the conference. So I really hope to see you in our session. So I'll hand it over to Carol now. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Erin. Good transition to what we're going to cover next. So I'm Carol Crawford. I'm a senior consultant and leader of the Talent and Culture Services at WMEP. Here's my background. I have an mainly operations focused background, both at large companies and small companies. And I always used my passion for working with people and sustainability to drive success. And I know it can be different when you're at a large company and a small company, and we'll touch on both of those scenarios. I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach, and I'd like to today look at sustainability leadership through this lens for a bit of a different take. So what you see before you is an employee experience or employee life cycle journey. There's many versions of these. Some of them expand into 17 or 18 steps. This is Gallup's 7-step employee experience journey. It's kind of a powerhouse slide because it talks about what the most valuable asset to the organization is, employees coming through that journey, where they start and when they end, and what the organization does to make sure that that journey is optimal and productive. So I'd like to look at each one of these steps with a sustainability focus and an idea of the future workforce. So going forward, we'll look at that, and then we'll also touch on the changing workforce to sum up. So we can go to the next slide and just hit one more. I didn't make each one of these a fly-in for the reason that you just thought. So there's a lot on this slide, but we're going to unpack it and take it one by one. So at the top is the employee life cycle journey. Each one of these steps gives us a chance to engage with employees and drive sustainability and leverage sustainability as a competitive advantage and develop a leadership structure around it. So the first step, attract. So I have a couple of questions to just kind of prompt sustainability-minded thoughts about each one of these steps and what you can do in your organization, no matter what your role, to try to start to think about how sustainability can be infused and leveraged at each one of the steps of the journey. So attracting employees, that starts way before the employee comes to the organization. We ask about if you're leveraging sustainability in your employee value proposition and EVP and brand to attract top talent. We know employees now look at a potential employer from a different angle. They want to know that that employer is a good corporate citizen, a good steward of the environment. They check that potential employer out in advance before even considering if they want to submit a resume. Millennials, the largest percentage of the workforce, who will be over 75% of the workforce by 2025, consider a company's social and environmental commitment when deciding to work for them or not, to even entertain working for them. 64% are in that camp. So you have to start that process of kind of promoting yourself to potential employees through that employee value proposition, and sustainability can be a part of that. And that's the very beginning of the journey. Then we move into hiring. So are we picking the stars? And I say sustainability stars. Do you interview for culture and values alignment? Do you know that you have employees who have that passion for sustainability? No matter what the maturity level of sustainability is in your organization, it's still important to know that that's a connection to them. Employees who are who have better connection, values, alignment, and connection to an organization are more likely to stay, be engaged, and be productive. And by the way, the number is not high. According to a recent Gallup study, only 27% of employees strongly agree that they believe in their organization's values. So there's room for improvement there. You can start to update your cultural and interview guides to probe and ask open-ended questions to have potential employees start talking about their personal values, their sustainability mindedness, and explore that area if it's not formalized. Some larger companies like 3M had a very formal program. Now they have a strategic sustainability framework with science for circular, climate, and community with sub goals where you could select examples to talk to and expand on. But even if you have a small company that hasn't formalized these types of concepts, you can still ask about examples for environmental stewardship, product lifecycle management. Just ask about how that employee might have a sustainability connection so that you have some alignment with your values to start. Then we move into onboarding. How can sustainability facilitate early connections? And I have the number one after that because the number one determiner of successful onboarding and retention is connections. It's actually a connection, a powerful connection. So employees that start new and are onboarded, the sooner they can make connections, the more likely they are to stay and accelerate to productivity. So leveraging that with sustainability, finding common ground, getting an onboarding buddy that has sustainability passion and connecting on that front is an easy way to start off supporting onboarding and getting going on that sustainability journey. Then we move into the engagement, and sustainability can build on purpose and passions that are the essence of engagement. Engaged employees are just are more productive. In fact, they're 17% more productive, and an engaged workforce drives 21% higher profitability, according to the recent Gallup study. So you want employees who are not just there at the company working, but are engaged, passionate, have purpose, and can drive those performance metrics. So creating a linkage to your organization's sustainability connections is critical. I know later Lisa's going to talk about green teams and things along those lines that could be examples of driving engagement and getting employees connected and engaged early. Then we move on to performance. How can we drive performance to higher levels through clear expectations and using sustainability practices to do so? So there's a lot of examples of different levels of sustainability maturity and what it might mean to different functional performance areas. And I'd like to share one quick example of a client of ours that does manufacture a beverage equipment manufacturer, relatively small, who wanted to get into playing with the larger players like Pepsi and others. Their manufacturing manager was able to anticipate the needs of those larger clients and operationalize the metrics for water management, put it on the scorecard for their operations performance metrics, and start to work on driving excellence in that area so that when they were ready to go after that larger client, they already had part of the framework developed. And in doing so, he was also able to infuse sustainability into his functional area, driving that performance to higher level and meeting some of those needs. And by the way, that also allowed for that cross-functional collaboration that Aaron just talked about too, with other areas, because you can imagine the account managers were excited about that as well. Then developing, using sustainability opportunities to expand career pathways and enhance skill building. We just talked a lot about different skills. Skills are changing, workplace needs are evolving. So allowing an employee to see what's possible through these career pathways and possibilities is key to keeping them engaged, connected, and building the skills. Sustainability is a natural way of doing that because as we talked about, sustainability is sometimes more of a distributed model. It can be everybody's business. And it sometimes is a shared way of achieving objectives. Well, that's the perfect way to carve off tangent opportunities in project management, leadership development, some of the other areas. One that was in Erin's presentation was public speaking, getting kind of, a role that's front and center for sustainability for someone that's trying to expand their skill portfolio is excellent. And getting those leadership competencies driven through sustainability opportunities with career pathways and skill building. Then finally, when they go to depart, hopefully that's graceful, understanding why your talent leaves. So even better would be to understand why they stay. So rather than doing an exit survey and finding out why they are leaving, and of course, prior to that, they probably were declining in productivity and engagement, do it a little bit earlier and find out why they stay and what you can do more of. Was lack of corporate social responsibility an issue? Were there other areas that might expose some sustainability development opportunities that your departing talent can share? So that was a really quick overview of the employee life cycle. And I had my timer on, so I know that I'm at the end. If you just go to the next slide, this is a summary of all of those workplace changes. It's a little bit of a different angle, again, from Gallup, but the workplace is very different and it's changing and evolving as we speak. But just in simple buckets of the past and the future, employees today want a purpose. They don't just want a paycheck, and sustainability can provide a foundation for that. They want development, and in fact, they expect to be developed and trained, and look to the employer to do that. Again, we just talked about how sustainability can meet those needs. They want a coach, not a boss, a lot more frequent touch points, focus on strengths and not deficit thinking of weaknesses, and it really is their life, not their job. So wrapping all of that up into a sustainability umbrella, you can see how thinking through a sustainability lens allows us to meet the changing workplace needs of the future workforce. So with that was, we're just going to touch on that. That's my final slide. I'm ready to hand this over to Lisa.
Thank you, Carol, and thank you, Erin. Both of your presentations were fantastic, and you both hit on things that are going to come forward in my talk as well. So as those of you who are listening will learn, this is all interconnected together. So for those of you who do not know me, my name is Lisa Giesenbauer, and I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself. I'm currently the president of Evolution Marketing. We are a certified B Corporation operating in Waukesha County. I'm a sociologist by training and have been working in this intersectional space of sustainability, marketing communications, HR operations, and public policy development for a long time. My company, Evolution Marketing, just turned 16 in September. About 12 years ago, I was approached by the former president of the Waukesha, Ozaukee, Washington County Workforce Development Board. We're now called WAWorks. So lots of acronyms here. And I was asked to join the WA Workforce Development Board, specifically because of my background in sustainability and having worked with manufacturers in Wisconsin. So over the last dozen or so years, I've had the pleasure to work with key stakeholders across the workforce development space, from local government to the State Department of Workforce Development, local employers, NGOs or nonprofit organizations, as well as the different labor advocates and unions. Today, I will focus my talk on actions, strategies, and practices that I've seen work within business, again, tied to sustainability. As a practicing sociologist, I'm not going to ask you to do anything that I have not done myself with either my clients or my small team. Next slide, please. So I'd like to start with the first point is what to know about the future of work and workforce. Now, we've heard some of this, and I'm going to be digging down into specific parts of it. So the first thing to know is about the greening of jobs and skills. As you've heard from both speakers, the future of work is green. I would argue that every job in the future is going to have one type of green skill or a blue, green, turquoise skill, which you're going to hear a little bit about that in a minute. But all jobs will require folks to engage in some type of sustainability action. I am not saying that everyone's going to be a sustainability manager in the future. I am saying that someone may have a job where part of their responsibility is to be able to read a sustainability report. Say you're a Marcom person. read a sustainability report, and then communicate about those sustainability features. Next point is we're going to see a rise in multidisciplinary workplaces with employees trained in an interdisciplinary manner. Erin spoke to this with her research, and we're seeing it now. The next thing is the traditional career ladder is out. So anyone who tells you that there's a career ladder, don't listen. It's gone. It's out the window. What we now talk about is career pathways. And career pathways can look many different ways. The next one, please, is workforce wants to work for a company that's actually addressing their concerns. Carol just discussed this extensively, and this is so true. There is so much data. I mean, I could report on studies, but literally if you are under 35, you are more than likely wanting to work for a company who's engaged in social and environmental performance. And if you're not able to do that, you're not even going to think about applying for the jobs. And I've had many Gen Zers tell me, we're not even going to look at a company unless they're a certified B Corp, which to me just reinforces that this is where we're going with the future. We're also looking at workers want to be able to work in a company where they feel they're heard and they're able to impact and influence their organization. This ties back into exactly what Erin was talking about with the research she's finding with her organization. The next one is that we're learning workers want protections and the ability to share concerns confidentially. Now, something that we haven't touched on is that workers want the ability to share concerns about sustainability and the environmental performance of their company as well, especially if you're working for a bigger company, because we're now in a day and age where many things are litigious, and we're seeing a reorganization in global standards tied to reporting, tied to environmental performance. And so having whistleblower policies or processes in place for your workforce to be able to share concerns, especially if you're talking about a multinational company that's working in developing countries, that's very important. And again, employees will leave. The next one is that workers will leave, or future employers will not even apply to your company if you are not publicly addressing key environmental and social issues. Again, Carol talked about this in those looking at job descriptions and job postings. This is part and parcel to the future of work. We're all going to need to be talking about the role sustainability is playing. Next slide, please. This slide is from a report by the Manpower Group out of Milwaukee. This came out last year, and I love this slide because what it does is it shows literally the different types of jobs that tie into what Manpower Group is calling, I'm just going to read this from, this is actually, I'm reading this directly from the Manpower report. So what it says is the Manpower report unveils 775 plus green. So if you look at the diagram here, green plus roles, so that's 41% of current roles, okay, are defined as green plus. And then turquoise roles, which is business, technical, business, community, and leadership roles. So that's over here on the side where it says 59% of total roles identified. Thank you. Awesome job, Christina, moving the arrow. Perfect. Okay, so this is the future, right? So there's light green, there's green plus, and there's turquoise. And the gist of all of this is that these jobs exist today. And what's going to happen is that we just need to have additional skills added in to these specific jobs. I know Carol is smiling because I can see her face on this. And this is true, right? This is our future. You may be an attorney who has never in your life, Erin's going to be smiling too, because I see her too. You may be an attorney who has never had to do any type of environmental compliance. But in the future, because your company is working, selling to the EU, you now have to be doing environmental compliance reporting to the EU to import a product. Okay, so now all of a sudden as an attorney, you have to have this new green skill, and you need to understand the compliance side of what it is you're reporting and what those laws are. So this, to me, this slide does just such a phenomenal job of saying, this is our future. So again, let's get prepared. Next slide, please. All right, so I want to talk to you now about some of the trends that we're seeing, and then I'm going to do an example from a local community business. So key workforce and labor demands and trends. The first thing that we're seeing is in 2023, I get excited, so I talk fast. 2023, we are seeing a rise in unions, specifically unions in new sectors where we have not traditionally seen unions working. For example, my intern works at a restaurant in the Madison area, and 2 summers ago, she and her colleague waitstaff decided to form a union so that they could have better worker rights as waitstaff in a restaurant, a small business in Madison. And they formed a union, and their union has helped them to have better, not only pay, but better interactions and planning for literally their hours. So, I mean, it's very interesting. So that's just one example, but we're seeing across different sectors. We're also seeing worker pay, and we're not just talking about worker pay increase, we're seeing an emphasis on living wage standards. And we're not just talking about in the United States, we're talking about everywhere, an understanding about what is living wage. And I literally was talking to a colleague yesterday who said to me, in today's age, and so in 2023, most workers or most companies full-time is between 30 and 32 hours a week. And then most all employees today, again, who are under 40, also have a side hustle. And my colleague literally said to me, this happens, Lisa, because workers are not paid a living wage. And I thought that was very interesting. And my colleague is a VP of DE&I. So I thought that was very interesting to hear her take on that. And we're also seeing that in the data. Another thing that we're seeing is an increased demand or expectation for not only a flexible work schedule, but literally a 4-day work week. I don't know how many of you have heard about that, but this is a very big movement in the B Corp community, as well as out of Australia, New Zealand, parts of the EU and the UK have moved to it. I know some companies in Wisconsin have also started implementing the 4-day work week. And then the other thing is, now that we're past COVID, everyone is saying, let's move back to the way we used to do work. And that's having somebody in the office 9 to 5. Well, let me tell you, employees don't want that. Employees want to work remotely. And I would argue that the future of work is also remote work. Another thing that we're seeing, the next one, is an increase in business resource groups or employee resource groups that are targeted. So these are within a company, and the companies are offering these targeted groups to provide resources to the different types of folks within their workforce. So for example, companies could have an LGBTQ plus business resource group. So anybody who falls on the LGBTQ plus spectrum could join that work group. And there are folks there who are able to provide resources. And then those individuals can also bring policy ideas then to their HR teams or to their organization. So it's really leaning in to how we are each unique instead of trying to make everyone be the same. It's accepting how we're all different. And then the last one on this is that we're starting to see partnerships in ways that we have not seen before, such as convenings across multiple sectors to solve problems. I just want to tell you about the pictures that you see on this slide are from Green Homeowners United. They're a WSBC member, and they're out of West Allis, Wisconsin. So they are a residential green homes contractor. So they work in green healthy home space, and their entire team are part of the laborers union, LAUNA. And earlier this year, they hosted an event where they brought together key stakeholders across government, the labor space, as well as the workforce development space and the environmental groups, to have conversations about how do we move forward and create opportunities for workers to be trained to be able to meet the coming demand of the Inflation Reduction Act. If we go to the next slide, I believe we have a case study there. Yes, we do. Here's a case study from a recent report that they issued. And I'm using this as literally a case study. So if you look on the left-hand side, that chart there basically says, this is the number of people in the state of Wisconsin in 2020 who are employed in these different types of skills. So I'm just going to use the first one: insulation workers, floor, ceiling, wall, and residential commercial. 560 people are employed in this space. And if you look to the chart on the right next to it, these numbers come from Blue and Green Alliance, did a report out, I believe it was the end of last year, early this year, that talked about basically we're going to need 10 million new green jobs in the construction space in the next 10 years. And so these data points come from that. And if you look at this, you could see all the way down in the bottom, it says that we anticipate 9,000 jobs over the next 10 years are going to be created in Wisconsin. And those are not including solar jobs. Okay, so those are literally folks who are doing insulation, doing air sealing. Their solar installers are listed there. So different types of jobs that have been considered traditional green. And this shows you that we're not ready, right? We're going to have all of this investment coming to the state of Wisconsin. And now we have this opportunity. So we have to go from 560 workers, or okay, let's do 1,000 because the winter installers are there too. Let's say we have 1,000 workers right now who are doing this, and we're going to need 9,000 workers. So we, employers, have to work on taking and training others in these green skills. And we have to take the current workforce as well as bring new workers into this and train them. So there's a great report at Green Homeowners or greenhomewi.com, Green Jobs Report. You can download it for free to learn more about this. Okay, next slide, please. So here's some actions that we can take to address worker experience. The first one is to examine your organization and workforce biases. through educational JEDI, Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion training for the entire organization, or DE&I efforts. I think a lot of people want to do this work, but they don't know where to begin. I think the first place to begin is to start with where are your biases. And I did a talk a couple of years ago, and I talked about how within the sustainability space, we have many biases. So I think, again, it's talking through and unpacking the different biases that exist. Next one is unpacking systemic inequalities in your workplace and work across the organization to create inclusive company culture. The next one after that is implement employee engagement initiatives. So this would be green teams, wellness teams, literally bringing together your workforce to help empower them to solve problems that they feel are important. That's actually what true engagement is. The next one is, you know what, if you haven't surveyed your workforce or you're not surveying your workforce in an ongoing manner, you need to understand what your workers are thinking and feeling. And you need to ask their thoughts and opinions, especially when you're implementing these programs. The next one is train teams to work interdisciplinarily. We've discussed this already, but this is the future, cross-training folks. And the last one is create common language that your entire company can use to describe sustainability. Really putting that language together and sharing it. So it's your vision, your mission, including it. So before a worker starts applying for the job, have that language there all the way through to your internal communications channels, to their onboarding packet, to literally, their e-newsletters that you share with your workforce, making sure your workers know what you're doing, how your company is working in this space, and then putting together metrics on that. I think there's one slide after this. Okay. If you want to click all of them, that would be great. So this is HR and operations tips to consider, and I'm running out of time. So I'm going to go high level here. Here's a list of things. Please be transparent, because we're in a day and age of uber transparency. So when you're putting together job postings, position descriptions, anything that you're working on, make sure you're transparent in that, and make sure that your workforce, your team members, your staff who are hiring people, they all have that same information. And then the last thing I'm going to say is I'm a Marcom person. I think everybody should start to think about impact storytelling, or a sustainability report, or an SDG report, or doing the GRI, but taking the opportunity to share what your company is doing in a public manner on a yearly basis. That's going to help you in so many different ways. And there's one slide after this that says thank you. And here's a QR code. So please take out your phones, click the QR code. I think it's 4 or 5 page document of resources that I've talked about here today that you can find at that QR code. Thank you. Now we're going to go to questions.
All right, folks, thank you so much for all that great insight and great suggestions and ideas about how to engage your workforce in different ways. So are there any questions from the audience? You can either come on off, mute and ask your questions, or type them in the chat. And I have one or two to get us started. So let me just find those here. I guess this will be for all of you. How can we use the information shared in today's webinar to take the next step in your organization? Especially for those who are relatively new to sustainability as a strategic initiative. Just thoughts from you about sort of, what can you do next?
Yeah, I could jump in there to get us started. So I think one of the best things to think about is, if you, let's say you're a small company and you know that you have limited resources. Everything that we just touched on is basically just engagement, period. Like Lisa touched on the fact of, like, if your organization doesn't have a leader that's invested in this, that's going to probably be a problem. So if there's a collective group of employees that feel this is important, I would say put together your list of whys and approach the leadership to start the engagement to get going. Most often, I think most leaders want to support their employees if their employees are passionate about something. But the other piece of this could be, think about what this means from a competitive advantage for your company. If you guys go down this path, if you want to get started because you see something that's of benefit for you, how can you then transform your organization, or how can you think in the long term of what the ROI would be? Because it will take time and resources and work to get there. But then I think the next piece of this is, as Lisa said, again, survey. But then the data that, a lot of the data we shared in this deck that you all have access to, we're basically giving you kind of a roadmap. in a way to see what does a team potentially look like. Where are the key struggles? You can definitely see in my slide where there was a level of disagreement, meaning that there's probably a lot of confusion around those things. And then just think through the prioritizations of like, maybe what's the 1 or 2 top things that you could focus on based on what your company does or what your employees want to see happen, and just get the conversation going. So that would be my suggestion to start.
Great. Carol or Lisa, do you want to add anything to that?
Sure, I can build on that and say a simple thing that you could do is to take that employee life cycle map and just kind of audit. It doesn't have to be formal, but just ask yourself, what is my organization doing in these areas, to understand what's possible, and consider the value that each one of those areas brings to the organization, because that really is what gets the attention of the organization when you can make a strong business case. So employee attraction, retention, onboarding, and productivity are all hot topics. So if you can attract employees that are the right target match, where they're productive, engaged, they're onboarded quickly, productivity is accelerated, those are all things that would be helpful and would be productivity improvements that you could achieve through some sustainability activities while you're driving and kind of infusing sustainability into the organization. So that would be my thought, is a simple process and tool to get started.
And I'm going to follow up. Everything Carol and Erin have said, I agree with completely. And I would add, we shouldn't forget about the element of training, and literally working with others. Erin, you had a cute word for it, bringing an expert in to like do a short-term training. I don't remember, was it a snippet?
Yes.
Okay, so you had an abbreviation for it, but I think something that's really important. One of the clients that Evolution Marketing has been working with for 7 or 8 years now, we worked with them earlier this year to go through a JEDI training, so Justice, Equity, Diversity, Inclusion training. And after the training, which we brought in an expert to lead, so that was August from Cream City Conservation, did the training. I met with the team, and the team was like, you know what? We've never even talked about any of these things. So it's literally started with a training and then a conversation, and additional training is coming out after that. And I think sometimes it could be as simple as that. And this is a smaller client. This is an under 20 employee company. So maybe that's an easier way if you're a smaller business to start versus if you're a much bigger business.
Yeah, and we're actually a very small association, and one of the things we're having kind of an eye-opening experience on right now is we are looking at our own operations, because we study ESG from an operational standpoint for major global companies, but we're also turning the mirror on us to say, how can we look at ourselves differently? And it's actually been really fun where I'm working across with different team members to calculate actually what is our carbon footprint, or we stopped printing certain things, how much paper is that saving? And what I'm excited to share with the team in a few weeks when we're ready to publish our impact report is we can actually have a really good wins that maybe we didn't know to celebrate, but just by starting this work, and then by starting to just demonstrate it and put quantifiable numbers around it, it starts to build momentum. So we're starting off definitely small, and I would consider us new to this in many ways. But the exciting thing is that we know our customers want us to do this. We're hearing across the board that from a competitive advantage standpoint, we need to do this. So that's kind of the aspect to think about this too, is when you do embark on this, what would be the benefits in the long term, short term and long term, and that can help you shape your path as well.
That's such a great point, Erin. I feel like we hear that over and over, like, where do we start? Just start with where you're at, right? Just start having the conversation. Just start, like Lisa had that point, survey your workforce, ask them what's important to them, ask them what they want. Like, you probably already do that. Some of you might do that already, and that's great. Maybe it's just a reevaluation of the questions you're asking. And, I hear over and over about just like this intersection of engagement and sustainability. And I don't know, I mean, we talk a lot about how younger generations really want this. I think that's true. And I think that there's a part of it that when you engage an employee on their passion, beyond what their job is, you can get so much more from them. And that might be sustainability, and that's great. And that might be something else, you know, but it's like, you don't know if you don't ask, and you don't know if you don't try to engage them in those ways. Like the days of like, I'm just sort of here to earn a paycheck, or, you know, that I think it kind of varies across industry and job function in of itself, because so they're not entirely over, but generally we want to feel good. We want to feel purposeful. We want to feel important. We want to feel useful. And so leverage that inside of your workforce, right? In whatever way it makes sense for your company. And we see people start to do that in organizations around sustainability, and then they're so surprised at the people that come out of the woodwork to support the initiative. It's like, yeah, you just had to start by asking the question. And especially, you know, if your teams are stretched thin, right? Like, yeah, the more you can get engaged in the initiative, the more you can spread out that workload. You don't have to have somebody with the sustainability title per se, right? And you can really spread that work out.
Well,
So,
what's nice too, if we
yeah.
think about the ESG acronym, the E, the S, and the G, you can build the actionable goals under each one of those that, like you were saying, one person doesn't have to be responsible for all three, but you could say to certain departments based on, you know, if you have environmental health and safety engineers or a manager in the building, they could be under the E, but under the S is potentially your HR department. So it's like the work can be done. It's just thinking about how the work gets structured and then how the goals are aligned within that.
And then let's talk about career pathways, right? Because career ladders out, but career pathways are our future. And what I mean by that is you might recruit somebody right out of college and they're very passionate about, say, environmental sustainability. 22, 23, they have an environmental science degree, super passionate about that. But they spend 3 or 4 years working in your company and they realize, you know what? I'm also really passionate about the social side of sustainability. So this is where cross-training, career pathways, and as Carol's slide said, it's not about the weaknesses, it's about the strengths. So what things can we cross-train you on so that then you can move? So instead of going up, you go over. So it's like a zigzag, it's the new career pathway. You know, so what things can you engage in from a training standpoint to be cross-trained or to be on another team, or even a career path of, okay, I'm going to do social sustainability and environmental now for the next 2 to 3 years, then I'm going to move into social sustainability. Again, I think if we looked at that manpower report, 775 jobs that are currently out there are going to be requiring blue-green or blue-green skills, right? So every job, as I say, every job is going to require some type of blue or green skill in the future. So if we could start that conversations now and taking advantage of what Erin is saying, where the passions of the workers lie and where their interests are, you know, and so you're not just saying your whole sustainability initiative is based on one person. That was the past. Now the sustainability initiatives of the company should really be spread out across the whole organization, I would argue.
Yeah, Lisa, and I think to that point, like adding in a person's skills, right? Because in like to what Carol's work is, and you know, we've done this on our team, is take like our strengths as a team and leverage like where are the gaps and what can I focus on because of my strengths, and what can you focus on because of your strengths, and just taking that lens has been so helpful in sort of like breaking out the workload, so to speak, and even how we plan as a team, right? And I'll say I get so many young people, like students, that reach out to me to ask like, okay, tell me about your career and how did you get there and how can I get a job in sustainability? And I'm always telling them, like, don't be attached to the title. Like, what are your skills? What are you interested in? Like, you can work in marketing and have a sustainability focus. You can work in operations and have a sustainability focus. You can work in quality and have a sustainability focus. Like, just to your point, Lisa, it's everywhere in the organization if you're doing it right. And so that sort of leads me into the next question. If any of you have any examples of like traditional tools that we've used, whether it's like lean or continuous improvement, that we can leverage from a sustainability angle in the workplace, and kind of put that sustainability spin on them.
Yeah, I know. I can just offer up. I know, Carol, this is probably more your specialty, but us being a quality-based trade association, we are going probably more focusing on the lean and actually some basic quality tools like PDCA or the Plan Do Check Act. There's also Six Sigma tools like DMAIC. There's also TRIZ, there's TQM, Total Quality Management. Those are just some of the things that we're talking about, but I don't know, Carol, if you had other clear examples you wanted to highlight.
Sure, just unmuting myself. Yeah, just building on all of those tools, and myself coming from an operations background. One thing I would point out is value stream mapping. So it's a very good tool to be able to look at a process, material, information flow in a process, and look for opportunities to eliminate waste. Well, you can do a lean and green value stream map where you're looking at opportunities to improve the sustainability outcomes, reduce the waste that are related to sustainability metrics and factors. And in the process, you're using traditional tools and then coming up with the same types of action planning, engagement, cross-functional implementation, but with that focus. And it can be an adder, right? You don't have to just do only a green waste style value stream map. You can include it in some of the activities that maybe your operations continuous improvement teams are doing, or you could be the one to champion it. And then you have a ready-made framework. So that would be one example. It blends very nicely, and it lends itself to just kind of integrating sustainability into activities that are already standard and or maybe taking place in your organization.
All right, so I'm going to talk about the Green Masters program and the B Impact Assessment. Both the Green Masters program, which Jesse had highlighted at the very beginning of our webinar, which is a tool the Wisconsin State Business Council offers. It's really good if you make I'm going to call it a green team, or in the B Corp world, we call it a B team, where you get a group of folks from throughout the organization who are, again, interested, passionate, very, very much wanting to be part of the solution or addressing with social and environmental challenges in the organization. Have that team go through the Green Masters program, because I think that will help you to figure out, and that's a nice on-ramp into sustainability, and it opens you up to questions that you may not have considered. And then if you take it a step further, the B Impact Assessment, that's what we use in the B Corp world. So we have to complete the B Impact Assessment. We have 5 areas, where the Green Masters program has more areas. When you complete the B Impact Assessment, it's the same thing. There's a series of questions that your team could be asked. And as you're going through and answering those questions, that helps you to think, oh, I never even knew we could do X, Y, or Z. And for the B Impact Assessment, we have an area that's literally called workers, and we have an area that's called community. And to me, both workers and community do such a great job of unpacking based on the sector your business is in, the number of employees you have, and the types of service. So if you're manufacturing, that's very different than professional service. So the questions are geared towards your type of business. So again, it's a great tool. Even if you don't submit to become a B Corp, you can still do the B Impact Assessment for free. It's online. We'll find a link and we'll put that in the chat. And you can literally just go through and again, check out the workers, because those questions can help you begin if you're not sure where to begin. So lots of free tools out there, I guess, is what I'm saying, Oh, Green Masters program, I'm sorry, you need to pay for it now, but it's like $300 if you're not a member, but it's free if you're a WSBC member.
Yeah, I did put that link in the chat, and I am just looking for
The B
here I
Impact
have the Impact assessment one here.
Thank you, Jesse.
Yeah. Okay, well, you all didn't seem to have a lot of questions today. I know this is like less of a technical sort of topic, and if you have questions or follow-up, please, feel free to reach out to us. I will be sending out the recording along with the slides, as well as just information on the conference. So I hope to see you all there. And thanks again for being here today.
Bye.